There is a quiet truth that has been whispering to you since the moment you arrived in this world, long before you learned your name, long before you learned to identify yourself by your achievements, your failures, your wounds, or your roles. It is a truth so simple that the mind often overlooks it, and so vast that the ego resists it. That truth is this: you are not separate from God. You never have been, you never could be. You are not a visitor in a hostile universe trying to earn worthiness, approval, or love. You are the universe becoming conscious of itself through you. You are God expressing itself in human form. The confusion begins the moment you forget this. When you begin to believe that you are small, limited, broken, or incomplete, you begin to search outside yourself for what has always lived within you. You look for power in money, in status, in relationships, in recognition. You look for safety and control, for peace and certainty, for love and approval. And yet, no matter how much you gather, accumulate, or achieve, there remains a subtle hunger, a quiet restlessness, a feeling that something essential is missing. That hunger is not a flaw in you. It is the soul remembering its source. You were not created to live in fear. Fear is not your nature. Fear is the product of identification with the ego, the part of the mind that believes it is separate, vulnerable, and alone. The ego survives by comparison, judgment, and resistance. It thrives on the illusion of division, me versus you, success versus failure, worthy versus unworthy, sacred versus ordinary. But the soul does not know division. The soul knows only unity. The soul knows that the same intelligence that spins galaxies into existence beats your heart, animates your breath, and thinks through your mind right now. When you say, "I am separate from God," you are unknowingly declaring war on your own essence. You are denying the very source of your being. You are trying to live as a wave that believes it has been cut off from the ocean. And a wave that forgets the ocean will always feel anxious, always feel temporary, always fear crashing and disappearing. But a wave that remembers it is the ocean moving will experience itself very differently. It will still rise and fall, still move and change, but it will do so with trust, with grace, with an unshakable knowing of what it truly is. You are not here to prove your worth. You are here to express your truth. A rose does not wake up in the morning questioning whether it deserves to bloom. It does not look at other flowers and feel inferior or superior. It does not apologize for its fragrance or compete for attention. It simply expresses what it was created to express. In that expression, there is beauty, harmony, and contribution. You are no different. Your purpose is not something you must chase. It is something you must allow. The moment you stop trying to become something and begin remembering who you already are, everything begins to shift. When you align with your higher self, you stop living from the cramped identity of the ego and begin living from the expansive awareness of the soul. You no longer ask, "What can I get?" You begin asking, "What wants to express itself through me?" You no longer ask, "How can I protect myself?" You begin asking, "How can I trust the intelligence that created me?" The ego is obsessed with outcomes. It lives in the past and the future, replaying old stories and rehearsing imagined threats. The soul lives only in the now. The soul understands that this moment is not a stepping stone to something else. It is the doorway through which all creation flows. When you bring your attention fully into the present moment, you align with the same creative force that is always present. In that alignment, clarity replaces confusion, peace replaces struggle, and effort gives way to ease. You do not create your life through force, you create it through alignment. Just as a radio does not produce music but receives it when tuned to the proper frequency, you do not manufacture divine power, you receive it when you align with it. The power you are searching for is not something you must earn, it is something you must stop resisting. It is already within you, patiently waiting for your permission to flow. Every time you judge yourself, you block that flow. Every time you resent another, you block that flow. Every time you cling to guilt, shame, or blame, you block that flow. These are not moral failings, they are misunderstandings of identity. When you believe you are separate, you judge. When you remember you are one, you forgive. Forgiveness is not something you do for others. Forgiveness is something you do to release yourself from the illusion that another has the power to diminish your divinity. There are no justified resentments because resentment assumes separation. It assumes that someone else has taken something from you that you cannot access within yourself. But if you are connected to the source of all things, Nothing essential can ever be taken from you. Love, peace, joy, creativity, and abundance are not external commodities, they are internal states of alignment. When you forgive, you are not condoning behavior, you are reclaiming your freedom. Healing begins the moment you stop asking, "What is wrong with me?" and begin asking, "What is true about me?" You are not your wounds, you are not your past. You are not the labels you have accepted or the stories you have repeated. You are the awareness in which all of these experiences arise and dissolve. When you identify with awareness rather than with experience, suffering loses its grip. This does not mean you bypass pain or deny emotion. It means you allow everything to be present without making it your identity. Pain becomes a messenger rather than a prison. Emotion becomes energy in motion rather than a verdict about who you are. Even your challenges begin to reveal their hidden purpose, to guide you back to yourself. The universe is not happening to you, it is happening through you. Every experience, pleasant or painful, is part of a larger intelligence designed to awaken you to your true nature. When you resist what is, you create suffering. When you align with what is, you discover meaning. This alignment is not passive resignation, it is conscious cooperation with life itself. When you say, "I am God," expressing itself in human form, you are not making a claim of superiority, you are making a claim of unity. You are acknowledging that the same presence that animates all life animates you. This realization does not inflate the ego, it dissolves it. It replaces arrogance with humility, fear with trust, and striving with service. Service is the natural expression of alignment. When you know who you are, you naturally extend love, compassion, and creativity into the world. You do not do this to be seen, praised, or validated. You do it because it is your nature. The sun does not shine to receive applause. It shines because shining is what it is. As you awaken to this truth, you may notice that many of the things you once chased begin to lose their hold on you. Not because they were wrong, but because they were substitutes. You were never meant to find yourself in possessions, titles, or achievements. These can be enjoyed, appreciated, and utilized, but they were never meant to define you. When they do, they become burdens. When they don't, they become blessings. Inner freedom arises when you stop outsourcing your sense of self. When you no longer need the world to be a certain way for you to be at peace, you have discovered true power. This power is quiet. It does not dominate or demand. It allows. It trusts. It knows. You were born with everything you need to live a meaningful, fulfilled, and inspired life. What you lack is not capacity, but remembrance. And remembrance begins with awareness. Awareness of your thoughts. Awareness of your beliefs. Awareness of the subtle ways you deny your own divinity through fear, judgment, and doubt. Change your thoughts, and you change your life, not because thoughts magically manipulate reality, but because thoughts determine alignment. When your thoughts are aligned with truth, your actions flow with intelligence. When your actions flow with intelligence, your life reflects harmony. The invitation is always available to you in every moment, regardless of circumstance. You do not need ideal conditions to awaken. You do not need to fix yourself before you can be whole. You need only to notice what is already present, the breath moving in and out of your body, the awareness observing this breath, the stillness beneath the movement. This stillness is not empty. It is full of potential. It is the same stillness from which stars are born. When you rest in this awareness, even briefly, you touch something timeless. You touch the part of you that was never wounded, never lacking, never afraid. From this place, you can engage the world without being consumed by it. You can participate fully without losing yourself. You can love deeply without clinging. You are not here by accident. You are not a mistake in a random universe. You are a deliberate expression of an infinite intelligence exploring itself through form. When you live from this knowing, life stops being a problem to solve and becomes a mystery to experience. And so the question is no longer, how do I find God? The question becomes, how do I stop forgetting? How do I remove the blocks to awareness? How do I release the beliefs that keep me small? How do I choose love over fear, presence over distraction, truth over illusion? The answers are not hidden. They are revealed through willingness. Willingness to let go of the past. Willingness to forgive. Willingness to trust. willingness to be still. In that stillness, you will remember what you have always known. You are not separate from God. You are God expressing itself as you, right here, right now, in this breath, in this moment, in this life. And when you live from that truth, life does not become perfect, but it becomes purposeful. It becomes aligned. It becomes free. When you begin to live from this remembrance, something subtle but profound occurs inside you. The frantic need to control outcomes softens. The constant inner dialogue of self-judgment quiets. You start to notice that life no longer feels like a series of battles to be won or avoided, but like a flowing conversation between you and something infinitely wiser than the thinking mind. You realize that you were never meant to dominate life, nor to hide from it, but to dance with it. And a dance requires trust. It requires listening. It requires surrendering the illusion that you must always lead. Surrender is not weakness. It is intelligence, recognizing a greater intelligence. It is the ego stepping aside so the soul can guide. When you surrender, you do not give up your power. You return it to its source. You stop insisting that life conform to your fears and begin allowing it to reveal its wisdom. In this allowing, synchronicities appear. Support arrives from unexpected places. Doors open that you did not even know existed. Not because you forced them open, but because you were finally aligned with the current that moves all things. You begin to understand that resistance is the root of suffering. Resistance to what has already happened. Resistance to who someone else is. Resistance to the present moment as it is. The mind says, this should not be happening, and the soul gently responds, but it is. In that gap between should and is, suffering is born. When you close that gap with acceptance, peace naturally follows. Acceptance does not mean liking or approving everything. It means recognizing reality without arguing with it. And from that clarity, wise action becomes possible. The ego is terrified of acceptance because it believes acceptance means stagnation. But the opposite is true. Acceptance is the foundation of transformation. You cannot heal what you deny. You cannot transcend what you refuse to see. When you accept yourself fully, your light, your shadow, your humanity, you create the conditions for genuine change. Compassion becomes the soil in which growth occurs. Harshness only hardens what it touches. As you soften toward yourself, you soften toward others. You begin to see that everyone you encounter is also navigating the tension between ego and soul, between fear and love, between forgetting and remembering. You stop taking things so personally because you realize that most behavior is not about you at all. It is about someone else's level of awareness in that moment. This understanding does not make you passive. It makes you discerning. You learn when to engage and when to step back, when to speak and when to remain silent, when to give and when to let go. Letting go becomes a sacred practice rather than a loss. You let go of old identities that no longer fit. You let go of stories that kept you confined. You let go of the need to be right, the need to be superior, the need to be validated. With each release, you feel lighter, freer, more spacious. What remains is not emptiness, but presence. Not nothingness, but fullness. Presence is where life actually happens. Not in the memory of what was, not in the anticipation of what might be, but here, now. This moment, as ordinary as it may seem, is saturated with the divine. The sound of your breath, the weight of your body, the subtle pulse of awareness observing it all. When you are fully present, you are fully aligned. And when you are aligned, you are powerful, not in the way the world defines power, but in the way the universe recognizes it. This power does not shout, it does not need to convince, it radiates. It influences without force. It heals without effort. It creates without strain. When you live from this place, your very presence becomes a blessing. You uplift not by preaching, but by being. You teach not through words, but through alignment. Others may not know why they feel calmer around you, more open, more inspired, but something in them recognizes something in you. That recognition is the soul responding to itself. God, seeing God. Light, acknowledging light. You begin to notice that life responds differently to you when you stop trying to manipulate it. Opportunities align with your values. Relationships reflect authenticity rather than need. Even challenges take on a different quality. They no longer feel like punishments, but like invitations, opportunities to deepen trust, patience, and wisdom. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this here to teach me about who I really am? And often what it teaches you is humility. Not humiliation, but humility, the quiet understanding that you are both a unique expression and an inseparable part of the whole. You matter not because you are special in comparison to others, but because you are essential to the tapestry of existence. Remove any thread, and the pattern changes. Your presence here is not accidental, it is necessary. When you live with this knowing, gratitude becomes natural. Not forced gratitude, not performative gratitude, but a deep appreciation for simply being alive, for the chance to experience, to learn, to love, to remember. Gratitude opens the heart, and an open heart is the most receptive state there is. It receives guidance, inspiration, and grace effortlessly. Grace is not a reward for good behavior. It is the natural flow of life when resistance dissolves. It is what happens when you stop blocking what has always been trying to reach you. You do not attract grace, you allow it. You do not deserve it, you remember it. And so you walk forward, not as someone trying to become divine, but as someone learning to live in alignment with what you already are. You speak more gently, including to yourself. You listen more deeply. You act more intentionally. You trust more readily. And when fear arises, as it sometimes will, you meet it with compassion rather than condemnation. You understand that fear is simply love that has forgotten itself. In this remembering, life transforms not because circumstances magically disappear, but because your relationship to them changes. You are no longer at war with reality, you are in partnership with it. You move with life rather than against it. You allow the intelligence that created you to live through you, and this ultimately is freedom. Not freedom from responsibility, but freedom from illusion. Freedom from the belief that you are alone, separate, or incomplete. Freedom to be exactly as you are, while continually unfolding into deeper truth. You are God, not as a concept to inflate the ego, but as a reality to dissolve it. God expressing itself as breath, as awareness, as love, as you. And the more you live from this truth, the more effortlessly your life becomes a reflection of it, quietly, powerfully, unmistakably. As this awareness deepens, you may notice a gentle reorientation of your inner compass. What once pulled you outward now draws you inward. Not inward in a way that shrinks your world, but inward in a way that anchors you to something unshakable. You begin to sense that the guidance you have been seeking has always been present, quietly nudging you through intuition, through feeling, through a knowing that does not require explanation. This knowing does not shout, it does not argue. It waits patiently for your attention, and when you finally listen, it feels like remembering a language you once spoke fluently. You start to trust that inner voice more than the noise of opinion, more than the urgency of fear-based thinking. You recognize that wisdom does not arrive through frantic effort, but through stillness. In stillness, answers surface naturally. Not always the answers the ego wants, but the answers the soul recognizes as true. This is not a passive state. It is an alert, receptive presence that allows life to inform you moment by moment. From here, decisions feel less like calculations and more like alignments. Alignment brings a sense of effortlessness that can feel unfamiliar at first. The mind may question it, wondering if something is being missed, if you should be doing more, striving harder, pushing further. But soon you realize that effortlessness is not laziness, it is resonance. It is what happens when your inner state and outer actions are no longer in conflict. When you are aligned, energy is conserved rather than depleted. You give without exhaustion. You move without force. You rest without guilt. This is where joy begins to reemerge, not the fleeting excitement tied to achievement, but a quiet joy that exists independent of circumstance. It arises from being in harmony with yourself, from no longer fighting your own nature, from allowing life to express through you rather than attempting to dominate it. Joy becomes less of a pursuit and more of a byproduct of authenticity. Authenticity is the courage to stop pretending, to stop performing versions of yourself that were designed to earn approval or avoid rejection. When you are authentic, you are not trying to be impressive. You are simply present. This presence carries a resonance that cannot be manufactured. People may not always agree with you, but they will feel your sincerity. And sincerity has a way of dissolving defenses, starting with your own. As the layers of pretense fall away, you may discover a tenderness within yourself that was long protected by armor. This tenderness is not fragility, it is openness. It is the willingness to feel fully, to love without guarantees, to experience life without numbing or escaping. Vulnerability, when rooted in self-awareness, becomes a strength. It allows connection to flow without distortion. It allows compassion to arise without effort. Compassion deepens when you realize that no one is ahead of or behind anyone else. Each soul unfolds according to its own rhythm, its own curriculum, its own timing. Comparison loses its grip when you understand that growth is not linear and awakening is not competitive. You stop measuring your journey against someone else's milestones. You honor your own pace. You trust the intelligence that knows exactly where you need to be. This trust reshapes your relationship with uncertainty. What once felt threatening begins to feel spacious. You no longer need to have everything figured out to feel secure. Security comes from knowing that whatever arises, you have the inner resources to meet it. You have awareness, you have presence, you have connection. These are not taken away by circumstance, they are deepened by it. In moments of doubt, you return to the simplicity of being, to the breath, to the body, to the awareness, observing thought, without being consumed by it. You remember that you are not required to believe every thought that passes through your mind. Thoughts are events, not authorities. They arise, they pass, and awareness remains. When you rest in awareness, the mind becomes a tool rather than a tyrant. From this place, creativity flows naturally. Not just artistic creativity, but the creativity of living. You respond to challenges with curiosity rather than fear. You explore possibilities rather than clinging to habits. Life becomes a living inquiry rather than a rigid plan. You discover that creativity is not something you do. It is something you allow when you stop interfering with the natural flow of intelligence. As you allow more and resist less, love takes on a new meaning. Love is no longer something you bargain for or withhold. It becomes a state of being. You love not because someone meets your conditions, but because love is what you are when fear subsides. This love does not entangle, it liberates. It does not demand, it offers. It does not cling, it trusts. Trust is the quiet confidence that life is not against you, even when it challenges you, even when it strips away what you thought you needed, especially then, because what is removed was never the source of your strength. It was only a reminder to look within. Each loss becomes an invitation to discover a deeper layer of self-reliance, not the egoic kind that isolates, but the spiritual kind that connects you to the source of all support. You begin to live with a sense of participation rather than opposition. You cooperate with life instead of trying to outmaneuver it. You recognize that every moment offers a choice, to react from conditioning or to respond from awareness. The more you choose awareness, the more natural it becomes. What once required effort becomes instinctive. Presence becomes your default. In this state, even silence feels meaningful. You no longer rush to fill space with words or distractions. You appreciate the quiet intervals, the pauses between thoughts, the stillness beneath activity. In these spaces, you feel most clearly the presence that has always been with you, not as an idea, not as a belief, but as a direct experience of being alive. And gradually, gently, without fanfare, you realize that the search has ended. Not because you have found all the answers, but because you no longer need them to feel whole. The sense of lack dissolves. The striving relaxes. You are no longer becoming, you are being, fully, consciously, gratefully. From here, life continues to unfold, but it does so through a different lens. You meet each moment not as a problem to solve, but as a revelation to receive. You live not from separation, but from unity. Not from fear, but from trust. Not from ego, but from essence. And in this way, without effort or proclamation, you embody the truth that has always lived within you, the divine expressing itself through a human life, awake to itself, moving gently through the world, leaving behind not proof of greatness, but traces of peace. As this peace settles more deeply into your awareness, you begin to sense a profound shift in how you relate to time itself. The urgency that once drove you softens. The constant pressure to arrive somewhere else, to become someone else, loosens its grip. You realize that life has never been withholding itself from you, only waiting for you to be present enough to receive it. Time stops feeling like an adversary and starts feeling like a canvas wide, forgiving, and responsive to the consciousness you bring into it. You notice that when you are fully here, the past loses its authority. Old memories may still arise, but they no longer define you. They become like clouds passing through a vast sky, noticed, acknowledged, and released. You understand now that memory is not identity. What happened to you is not who you are. It was an experience moving through awareness, not the awareness itself. In this recognition, forgiveness deepens even further, not just forgiveness of others, but forgiveness of yourself for believing you are ever less than whole. Self-forgiveness opens a doorway that has long been guarded by shame. And behind that doorway is gentleness. A gentleness that allows you to treat yourself as life itself treats you with patience, curiosity, and unconditional allowance. You begin to speak to yourself differently. You no longer motivate through criticism or fear. You encourage through understanding. This internal shift may seem small, but it transforms everything, because the relationship you have with yourself is the foundation of every other relationship you will ever experience. As this foundation stabilizes, you find that your interactions with the world become simpler. You no longer need to manage impressions or maintain defenses. You meet people where they are without trying to fix or judge them. You listen more than you speak, and when you do speak, your words carry clarity rather than tension. Communication becomes an exchange of presence rather than a negotiation of egos. Even disagreement loses its sharp edges when it is rooted in mutual respect for the shared humanity beneath differing views. You begin to sense an invisible coherence moving through your life, a quiet orchestration that feels both intimate and vast. Events line up in ways that feel meaningful rather than random, not because you are controlling them, but because you are cooperating with them. You understand now that the universe does not respond to force, it responds to alignment. When your inner world is coherent, the outer world reflects that coherence in ways that often feel effortless and surprising. This does not mean life becomes free of challenge. It means challenge takes on a different role. Difficult moments no longer feel like interruptions to your spiritual life, they become part of it. You see that growth often arrives disguised as discomfort, and wisdom often emerges from uncertainty. Instead of asking for obstacles to disappear, you begin to ask for the awareness to meet them wisely. And that awareness, once cultivated, does not fail you. There is a growing sense that you are being lived as much as you are living, that something larger is moving through you, expressing itself uniquely as your thoughts, your actions, your creativity. This realization does not diminish your individuality, it enhances it. You see that your uniqueness is not separate from the whole, but an essential expression of it. Like a single note in a symphony, your life matters because it contributes a tone that no one else can replicate. With this understanding comes a natural humility, not the humility that shrinks, but the humility that relaxes. You no longer feel the need to prove your importance or defend your position. You know your value intrinsically, and that knowing frees you from comparison. Success stops being a measurement against others and becomes a measure of alignment within yourself. Are you living in accordance with your deepest values? Are you listening to your inner guidance? Are you acting from love rather than fear? These become the questions that guide you. As you live from these questions, abundance begins to be redefined. It is no longer confined to material accumulation, though material well-being may still flow naturally. Abundance becomes the felt sense of sufficiency. Enough time, enough energy, enough support, enough love. You realize that scarcity was never a condition of life, but a condition of thought. When thought aligns with truth, the experience of life expands accordingly. You begin to notice beauty in places you once overlooked, in ordinary moments, in quiet mornings, in simple exchanges. Beauty reveals itself not because it suddenly appears, but because your perception has softened enough to notice it. Appreciation becomes a way of seeing rather than a response to special occasions. Life no longer needs to be extraordinary to be meaningful. Meaning is found in presence, not spectacle. This presence gradually infuses your actions with integrity. You do what feels true, even when it is not the most convenient option. You honor your inner yes and your inner no with equal respect. Boundaries become clearer, not as walls, but as expressions of self-respect. You give freely where giving feels aligned, and you step back gracefully where it does not. There is no guilt in either choice, because both arise from awareness. As awareness continues to deepen, you recognize that love is not something you fall into or out of. It is not dependent on conditions or circumstances. Love is the natural state of awareness when it is unobstructed. Fear obstructs love. Judgment obstructs love. Attachment obstructs love. As these dissolve, love shines through effortlessly. It is not sentimental or dramatic. It is steady, inclusive, and quietly transformative. You feel this love not just toward people, but toward life itself, toward the process of becoming, toward the mystery that cannot be fully understood but can be deeply trusted. This trust allows you to relax into uncertainty without losing your sense of direction. You may not always know what is coming next, but you know how to be present with what is here now, and that presence becomes your compass. There is a growing recognition that nothing essential is missing. The longing that once drove you outward has softened into contentment, not complacency, but wholeness. From this wholeness, action still arises. Dreams still form. Goals still emerge, but they are no longer fueled by a sense of inadequacy. They are expressions of creativity rather than attempts to fill a void. And so you move forward, not as someone searching for meaning, but as someone expressing it. Each step becomes an offering. Each moment becomes an opportunity to embody the truth you have remembered. You are not rushing toward enlightenment, you are living it quietly, naturally, in the way you listen, the way you choose, the way you respond. The journey does not end here, because awareness is infinite, but the struggle ends. The sense of separation ends. The belief that you must earn your place in the universe ends. What remains is a gentle, steady knowing that you are held, guided, and supported by the very intelligence that lives as you. And in this knowing, life unfolds not as a test you must pass, but as an experience you are invited to fully inhabit, awake, aligned, and at peace. There comes a moment in every life when the noise grows tired of itself, when the endless commentary of the mind finally pauses long enough for something quieter, truer, and infinitely more loving to be heard. This is that moment, not because circumstances have suddenly become perfect, but because you have ripened into readiness. You have walked through enough days of striving and nights of wondering to recognize the futility of searching outside yourself for what has always lived within. And now, in this stillness, you can feel it, the gentle insistence of your own soul, reminding you that you are not broken, not late, not missing anything essential. You are being invited to remember. The invitation is simple, though the ego will insist it is complicated. It asks you to stop arguing with life, to loosen the grip of control that has exhausted you, and to rest into the awareness that there is an intelligence moving through you that has never once made a mistake. This intelligence does not shout. It does not threaten. It does not shame or rush you. It waits patiently, like a loving parent who knows that the child will eventually look up and recognize the guidance that has been there all along. When you stop fighting the present moment, when you stop rehearsing the past or bargaining with the future, you step into alignment with this presence. And in that alignment, clarity arrives without effort. You may have been taught that guidance from God is something external, descending from the sky at rare and dramatic moments, reserved for saints or mystics or those who somehow earn special favor. But the truth is far more intimate and far more accessible. Divine guidance is not separate from you. It moves as you. It thinks through you when your thoughts are aligned with love. It acts through you when you release the need to dominate outcomes. It feels like ease, like resonance, like a quiet yes in the body that requires no justification. When you learn to trust this feeling, you discover that you have been guided your entire life, even in moments you once labeled as mistakes. The ego, of course, resists this knowing. The ego thrives on the illusion of separation. It tells you that you are alone, that you must compete, that you must prove your worth through accumulation, achievement, and comparison. It convinces you that peace is conditional and happiness is something to be earned later, after you fix yourself, after you succeed, after you become someone else. But the soul speaks a different language. The soul says, you are enough now. It says, nothing real is missing. It says, you were whole before you had a name, and you will remain whole long after the roles you play fall away. When you identify with the ego, life feels heavy. Every interaction becomes a transaction. Every challenge feels personal. Every delay feels like a verdict on your value. But when you remember who you truly are, life softens. You begin to see that events are not happening to you, but for you, shaping you, refining you, guiding you back to your own truth. The same situation that once triggered fear now becomes a classroom. The same obstacle that once felt like punishment now reveals itself as redirection. This is not positive thinking. This is alignment with reality as it actually is. There is a profound freedom that arises when you let go of the story that you must control everything to be safe. Control is the ego's attempt to substitute force for trust. Trust, on the other hand, is the soul's recognition that it is held by something infinitely wiser than the thinking mind. Trust does not mean passivity. It means inspired action. It means listening before reacting. It means allowing intuition to lead while the intellect serves rather than dominates. When you operate from this place, decisions become simpler. Not easier in the sense of effort-free, but cleaner, less conflicted, more coherent. You may notice that when you are aligned, resistance dissolves. You still work, but the work flows. You still speak, but your words land with kindness and clarity. You still face uncertainty, but it no longer terrifies you. This is because you are no longer asking life to validate you. You are participating in life as an expression of something already validated by its own existence. A tree does not ask permission to grow. A river does not apologize for flowing. Neither do you need to justify your being. You are here because life itself chose to experience itself as you. There is a sacred intelligence in your emotions too when you learn to listen without judgment. Feelings are not obstacles to enlightenment. They are messengers. They point you toward alignment or away from it. When you feel contracted, anxious, resentful, or depleted, it is not a sign that you are failing. It is feedback that your thoughts have drifted away from truth. When you feel expansive, peaceful, loving, or quietly joyful, it is evidence that you are in harmony with your deeper nature. The practice is not to suppress feelings, but to follow them back to the beliefs that created them, and then gently release what no longer serves. One of the most liberating realizations on this path is the understanding that there are no justified resentments. This does not mean that harm did not occur or that boundaries are unnecessary. It means that carrying resentment only binds you to the very pain you wish to escape. Forgiveness, in its truest form, is not about condoning behavior. It is about reclaiming your energy. It is the decision to stop letting the past rent space in your present. When you forgive, you are not saying what happened was acceptable. You are saying, I choose peace over perpetual conflict. And peace, once chosen, becomes a way of being rather than a fleeting emotion. As you practice forgiveness, something extraordinary happens. The heart, once guarded, begins to soften. The nervous system, once braced for attack, begins to relax. The mind, once obsessed with fairness and blame, begins to open to compassion. You start to see that everyone is acting from their own level of consciousness, doing the best they can with the awareness they have. This does not make you superior, it makes you free. You are no longer required to carry the burden of other people's unconsciousness. You are free to respond from love or to walk away without hatred. Living in the now is not a spiritual slogan. It is a practical necessity for inner freedom. The present moment is the only place where life actually occurs. The past exists as memory, the future as imagination, but the now is where breath happens, where awareness lives, where guidance is accessible. When you bring your attention fully into this moment, even ordinary activities become infused with meaning. Washing dishes becomes meditation. Listening becomes communion. Walking becomes prayer. You realize that spirituality is not something you do on special occasions. It is the quality of presence you bring to whatever is in front of you. In this presence, intuition becomes unmistakable. It does not argue or demand. It simply knows. You may feel it as a subtle pull, a sense of resonance, a quiet certainty that does not need applause. The more you honor it, the clearer it becomes. The more you ignore it, the louder the ego grows. But even then, intuition never leaves. It waits, patient and compassionate, until you are willing to listen again. And listening, truly listening, is an act of humility. It is the willingness to admit that the mind does not have all the answers and that wisdom can arise from silence. You are not here to become someone else. You are here to unbecome everything you are not. Every layer of conditioning you release brings you closer to the essence that has always been intact. This essence is love, not as sentimentality, but as the fundamental creative force of the universe. Love as coherence. Love as intelligence. Love as the organizing principle that turns chaos into order and fear into curiosity. When you align with this love, your life becomes a demonstration rather than a declaration. You no longer need to convince anyone of anything. Your presence speaks for itself. As you rest into this truth, you may notice a shift in how you relate to goals and desires. They no longer feel like desperate attempts to fill a void. They become expressions of curiosity, creativity, and contribution. You still set intentions, but you hold them lightly. You act, but you are not attached to outcomes. You understand that fulfillment does not come from getting what you want, but from wanting what aligns with who you truly are. And when alignment is present, life has a way of arranging details with elegance you could never orchestrate through force. This is what it means to be ready. Ready to stop chasing and start allowing. Ready to release the illusion that salvation lies somewhere else, in some future version of yourself. Ready to trust that the guidance you seek has been guiding you all along. Tonight, in this quiet recognition, something shifts, not because you made it happen, but because you stopped interfering with what was already happening. You remember that you are not a fragment in a hostile world, but a vital expression of a benevolent whole. Let this knowing settle into your bones. Let it inform your choices, soften your reactions, and expand your compassion. When doubt arises, return to the breath. When fear whispers, listen deeper. When life feels uncertain, anchor yourself in the awareness that you are supported by an intelligence that does not sleep. You are finally ready, not because you have perfected yourself, but because you have learned to listen. And in that listening, you discover the greatest truth of all. The voice you have been waiting for has always been your own, speaking in the language of love, guiding you home. And as you rest in that recognition, you begin to sense something even subtler taking place beneath the surface of thought, a gentle reordering, like the settling of water after it has been stirred for too long. This is the moment when striving loosens its grip and being takes its rightful place. You are no longer pushing yourself toward life. Life is drawing you inward into harmony. There is a quiet relief in realizing that you were never meant to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. The universe is self-sustaining. Your task has never been to manage it, only to align with it. From this alignment comes a new way of seeing. You notice how often you once measured yourself against imagined standards, chasing approval, fearing disapproval, outsourcing your sense of worth to the opinions of others. Now, those measures begin to feel irrelevant, like rules from a game you no longer play. You understand that approval seeking is simply love misunderstood, a longing to remember connection in a world that taught you separation. When you reconnect with your own inner source, the hunger for external validation fades naturally. You are no longer asking, "Am I enough?" You are living from the quiet certainty that you always have been. In this state, compassion deepens, not as a moral obligation, but as a natural response to understanding. You see that every person you encounter is navigating their own inner weather, responding from their own level of awareness. Judgment softens because you recognize its roots in fear. You begin to listen more than you speak, not because you have nothing to say, but because presence itself has become your language. In your listening, others feel seen. In your calm, others feel permission to rest. Without effort, you become a space where healing can occur. Even your relationship with challenges transforms. Difficult moments no longer arrive as enemies to be defeated, but as invitations to remember who you are in the midst of them. You notice that peace is not the absence of difficulty, it is the absence of inner resistance to what is. When you stop arguing with reality, suffering loosens its hold. Pain may still arise, the body feels, the heart feels, but suffering, which is pain multiplied by resistance, begins to dissolve. You discover that you can meet discomfort with curiosity instead of fear, and in doing so, it often reveals its lesson and moves on. There is a growing intimacy with silence now. Silence no longer feels empty or awkward. It feels alive, intelligent, full. In silence, you are not waiting for something to happen. You are participating in what is always happening. This is where insight arrives without effort, where solutions appear without strain, where creativity flows without forcing. Silence becomes a trusted companion, a reminder that wisdom does not require noise to announce itself. The more you return here, the more familiar it becomes, until it feels like home. From this home within, your actions take on a different quality. You may still be busy, still engaged in the world, still fulfilling responsibilities, but there is less friction. You act from inspiration rather than obligation. You choose from alignment rather than fear. You find yourself saying no without guilt and yes without resentment. Life becomes less about proving and more about expressing. What you do is no longer an attempt to secure your identity, it is a reflection of it. You may notice, too, that gratitude arises spontaneously, not because everything is perfect, but because you are present enough to notice what is already here. Gratitude is no longer a practice you force. It is a state that emerges when comparison falls away. When you stop measuring this moment against some imagined better one, appreciation flows naturally. You see beauty in small things, a breath, a gesture, a shaft of light, and these moments begin to feel abundant rather than ordinary. Life, once rushed through, now meets you where you are. As this awareness stabilizes, fear loses its authority. Fear may still visit, but it no longer commands. You recognize it as a signal, not a truth, a sign that attention has drifted away from love. Instead of obeying fear, you meet it with understanding. You listen to what it is trying to protect, and then you gently remind it that you are not alone, that you are guided, that you are supported by something larger than any single outcome. In this reassurance, fear relaxes, and courage emerges, not as bravado, but as trust. Trust becomes the foundation of your life now. Trust in timing, trust in intuition, trust in the unfolding. You begin to sense that nothing is late and nothing is early. Each experience arrives precisely when it can be integrated, when it can serve growth rather than overwhelm. This trust frees you from the urgency that once drove you. You stop chasing moments and start inhabiting them. You stop demanding certainty and start appreciating mystery. And in this openness, life reveals itself with a generosity that surprises you. What is unfolding here is not an escape from humanity, but a deeper entry into it. You are not transcending the world. You are learning to meet it without armor. Vulnerability becomes strength because you are no longer protecting a fragile identity. You are rooted in something unshakable. Love flows through you not because you force it, but because nothing is blocking it anymore. You realize that your presence, calm, grounded, awake, is your greatest contribution. Without preaching or persuading, you remind others of what they, too, carry within. And so the message continues, not as words imposed from outside, but as a living current moving through your awareness. It asks nothing of you except honesty and openness. It does not demand perfection, only presence. Each moment becomes an opportunity to choose alignment again, to return to the center, to listen rather than react. This is not a destination you arrive at once and for all. It is a relationship you nurture, breath by breath, choice by choice. Stay here now. Feel the simplicity of being. Notice how little is required for peace when you stop resisting yourself. Let this understanding move with you into whatever comes next, not as a concept to remember, but as a way of seeing, a way of living, a quiet confidence that wherever you go, the guidance you trust goes with you because it has never been separate from who you are. And as you continue resting in this awareness, you may sense a tenderness rising, an unexpected gentleness toward yourself. It is the tenderness that comes when you finally stop demanding that you be different from what you are in this moment. The inner critic, once so loud and persuasive, begins to lose its audience. You see it now as a habit, not a truth. You recognize that harshness toward yourself was never discipline, it was misunderstanding. And in that recognition, something loosens. You begin to speak to yourself with the same patience you would offer a frightened child, the same kindness you would give to someone you deeply love. This kindness is not indulgence, it is clarity. It allows you to see where growth is needed without turning growth into punishment. You can acknowledge patterns that no longer serve you without shaming yourself for having them. You can change direction without declaring yourself a failure for having taken the long way around. Life stops feeling like a test. You are constantly at risk of failing and begins to feel like a conversation, one in which every response, even the awkward ones, teaches you how to listen more deeply. With this shift, time itself seems to change texture. You notice fewer moments of rushing and more moments of arriving. Even when circumstances require speed, there is an inner steadiness that does not hurry. You are learning that urgency is often a mask for fear, and that true effectiveness arises from presence. When you are fully here, your actions carry weight, without strain. You do less, yet what you do matters more. Effort is replaced by intention, and intention by alignment. You may find that old identities begin to fall away quietly. Roles you once clung to for security, being the strong one, the fixer, the achiever, the pleaser, no longer feel necessary. You are not abandoning responsibility, you are releasing performance. You realize that love does not require a costume. Authenticity becomes less about expressing everything and more about hiding nothing. You allow yourself to be seen as you are, imperfect, evolving, real. And in that honesty, connection deepens. There is also a new relationship with uncertainty. What once felt threatening now feels spacious. You understand that not knowing is not a flaw in the process, it is the process. Mystery is no longer something to be solved, but something to be trusted. When answers do not arrive immediately, you resist the urge to force conclusions. You allow understanding to unfold in its own time, knowing that clarity rushed is often clarity distorted. Patience becomes a form of wisdom. As this wisdom integrates, you notice how naturally service arises, not as self-sacrifice, but as overflow. When you are connected to your inner source, giving does not deplete you, it energizes you. You give from wholeness, not from obligation. Whether through a word, a presence, or a simple act of kindness, your contribution feels effortless because it is an expression of who you are rather than a strategy to become someone. You begin to trust that your life, lived in alignment, is already enough of a gift. Even solitude takes on a different meaning. Being alone no longer feels like absence. It feels like intimacy. You enjoy your own company because you are no longer at war with your thoughts or emotions. Silence becomes nourishing. Reflection becomes restorative. And from this grounded solitude, relationships flourish, not because you need them to complete you, but because you choose them to share the fullness you already carry. There is a deepening reverence now for the ordinary. You realize that awakening is not marked by fireworks or constant bliss, but by a steady appreciation for what is. You find sacredness in routine, meaning in simplicity, grace in repetition. Life does not need to be extraordinary to be meaningful. It only needs to be met with awareness. In this meeting, even the most familiar moments reveal a quiet beauty you once overlooked. And when difficulties arise, as they will, you meet them differently. You pause before reacting. You breathe before speaking. You listen for the deeper question beneath the surface problem. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you find yourself asking, "What is this inviting me to see?" This shift in inquiry changes everything. It turns obstacles into teachers and setbacks into guidance. You are no longer resisting life's curriculum, you are participating in it consciously. All of this is happening not because you have acquired something new, but because you have remembered something ancient. You are remembering how to trust yourself, how to listen inwardly, how to cooperate with the intelligence that animates everything. This remembrance does not remove you from the world, it roots you more deeply in it. You walk with a quieter confidence now, one that does not need to announce itself. You know where your guidance comes from, and you honor it by following it gently, faithfully, one moment at a time. Remain with this knowing. Let it continue to unfold without forcing conclusions or seeking closure. This is not a story with an ending. It is a way of being that keeps revealing itself. Each breath is an invitation to return, each moment a chance to choose alignment again. And as you move forward, carry this with you, not as an idea to defend, but as a presence to live. You are listening now, you are open now, and that is enough for everything that comes next. And now, without effort, without announcement, the journey settles into a quiet completion that feels less like an ending and more like a gentle return. You sense it in the body first, a softening, an exhale you did not realize you had been holding for years. Nothing dramatic occurs, yet everything is different. You are no longer reaching for life from the outside, you are living it from the inside out. The search that once defined you dissolves, not because answers have been accumulated, but because the question itself has fallen away. You recognize that what you once called guidance was never absent, it was simply obscured by noise. And now, in this clarity, you understand that God's message has never been about instructions etched in stone or demands spoken in thunder. It has always been a frequency, quiet, steady, loving, available, the moment you chose to listen rather than resist. This message does not tell you who to become. It reminds you of who you already are. It does not push you forward. It draws you inward, where truth waits patiently. There is a deep peace in realizing that nothing essential needs to be added to you. You do not need to improve your worth, defend your existence, or justify your place here. You belong by virtue of being. Life itself has endorsed you by giving you breath. When this truth lands fully, striving gives way to trust, and trust gives way to a gentle joy that does not depend on circumstances. You may still have preferences, dreams, intentions, but they no longer carry the weight of your identity. You are free to want without needing, to hope without clinging. In this freedom, you begin to sense how seamlessly you fit into the larger rhythm of things. You are not separate from the unfolding, you are an expression of it. Just as the ocean moves through every wave, the same intelligence moves through your thoughts, your impulses, your creativity. When you stop resisting that movement, life feels guided rather than forced. Decisions arise naturally. Next steps reveal themselves quietly. You find that you are being led not towards something distant, but deeper into alignment with what is already present. Love, too, changes form. It is no longer something you seek or withhold. It becomes the atmosphere you live in. You love not because it is required, but because it is natural. You forgive not because it is virtuous, but because it is freeing. You listen not to agree or disagree, but to understand. And in this way, your very presence becomes a quiet benediction. You are no longer trying to heal the world. You are allowing the world to be touched by the peace you have made with yourself. As you move through your days, you may notice moments when the old patterns attempt to return, moments of doubt, impatience, or fear. When they arise, you do not judge them or push them away. You simply notice, breathe, and remember. You remember that you are not your thoughts. You remember that awareness is larger than any passing emotion. You remember that alignment is always one gentle choice away. And in that remembering, you return again effortlessly to center. This is the shift that changes everything, not a sudden transformation of the outer world, but a quiet revolution within. From here, life continues much as it always has, yet you experience it differently. You walk more slowly, even when you move quickly. You speak more softly, even when you are clear. You live more simply, even when your life is full. There is less to prove, less to defend, less to fear. What remains is presence, gratitude, and a deep trust in the intelligence that carries you. And so, as this message settles into silence, let it do what it was always meant to do, disappear into lived experience. Do not try to hold it. Do not try to remember every word. Let it become part of how you breathe, how you listen, how you choose. The truth does not need to be memorized, it needs to be embodied. Wherever you go from here, carry this knowing lightly, like a quiet light within, guiding without effort. You are finally ready, not because you have reached a destination, but because you have come home to yourself. And from this place, life unfolds not as a struggle to be survived, but as a sacred movement to be trusted. Stay open, stay present, stay kind to yourself. The voice you are listening to now will never leave you, because it is the voice of the life that has always been living you.